What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be talking about Airbnb and microbreweries.
So I guess what we kind of started off with is the concept of what we think microbreweries and why they've stuck so much recently and why they're pretty awesome, to be completely honest, because they've had a massive draw in the past couple of years. And I think most of that comes from kind of like this idea of people pursuing something. They're like, oh, like what's a local beer that I can try? And they'll find some small like in-house brewery that has a super small like hole-in-the-wall kind of establishment where you can go in and get a cheap beer that tastes really cool. And also you can be like, oh wow, like I see that like they literally take water from like a stream that's like I can literally see from here, like that kind of stuff. But I think it's an interesting business model and it's kind of become popular regardless of where you are in the country. And I kind of am interested to see how people kind of grow it and hopefully it doesn't become kind of one of those dried out trends, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because it easily can, obviously. There's obviously a limit to breweries.
Is there? I guess so. I mean, I think what I thought was really interesting about it is, so we're in a reclaimed or like refabricated, refurbished
Industrial office.
It was a Mack truck plant in the middle of the 20th century, and it's currently being turned into an incubator for different types of manufacturing. So one of the businesses here is Hijinks Brewing, and what's interesting about this trend is it's a way to reuse some of these like dead industrial sites, right? Because the brewing takes space, and it's basically manufacturing. So that's kind of the angle that I thought was interesting about it, because local governments are always looking for ways to make use of this space that it's kind of like dead for a while.
Yeah.
And this one seems to work. Like there's a crossover where there's these people, you only need like a couple of guys to operate one, and it's a sophisticated process, and you need recipe and like an angle and marketing and stuff, but it's not like building a jet engine also. Like it's if you're dedicated, I think it's accessible.
Yeah.
So I think that's the part that I thought was really interesting about it.
I think also it's really cool that there's kind of this like community aspect to it too, and that's what we opened with. And I think it's really interesting to see how some like even just like our little area, we have Hijinks Brewery like really like right down this hallway. And then like I think in the past maybe like six to like months to maybe a year, I've seen and heard of at least 3 or 4 more like microbreweries popping up in our area. There's one that popped out of an old warehouse right next to a real estate building, and then there was another one that was refurbished on Main Street in our town, literally just pop up in a matter of months, and it's blew up. I've gone there like 3 or 4 times, and it's awesome. It's a really, really cool establishment. And it has
give them a plug. What's it called?
Lost Tavern Brewery in Hellertown, PA. And the thing is, it's really good. I mean, it's really high quality stuff. It's not that expensive. And when normally another thing is that like there's this kind of like negative side to it. It's like people are like, oh, microbrews, like oh, it's like these people that have limited bottles, like they drive up the price and it's all overpriced. It's not that good, but it's like I think there is quality to be had, even if it's something that might be a little bit more expensive, because there's a story behind it. There's a narrative behind it. There's something behind it that makes people like interested in it.
People like buying things with a story.
Yeah, I mean you had that. You were just talking about that whiskey too, and when you were in Seattle. So
I was up there, and normally I drink Bullet because I'm a tech guy from San Francisco, and I'm a basic tech guy from San Francisco, so I drink Bullet, but bourbon. And I was in Seattle, and they had, I asked the bartender like, what they recommended, and he was kind of like plug in the local thing.
Yeah.
And I was into it for that reason. Like, I'm in a place, let me get the wares, the Seattle wares, check it out, but frankly, like my experience, the good part of my experience was participating in the local, supporting the local business, whatever. And it wasn't until later on that I realized I actually liked it.
Yeah.
I actually liked it, and I was like, oh, it had kind of this, interesting body, like whiskey, like wine or whatever, like does have these like really interesting, experience to it. It takes like 30 seconds for it to like really unfold like, what's going on with it, and it was solid. And like since then, I have looked for it,
Yeah.
But I'll be honest, like I think my skepticism, like traveling, whether it's in the States or abroad, and drinking, like particularly like things that are branded as local, like the best here or whatever, I'm down because of the experience, but I'm also like, could it really be that good if I haven't heard of it?
Yeah.
If it hasn't broken out, or I don't know, just like how many places can be good, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And unique, right?
Exactly.
Without being identical to something.
Yeah,
else.
exactly.
So I think, but the good part is the experimentation, right?
Yeah.
Just so many people trying, and even if there was, like beer is a really good example, because like Budweiser, like 3 or 4 huge.
There's the Titans. Like they've been there since the beginning, and they're
Coors,
not
Bud Light.
Yeah, they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And
they got out early after Prohibition.
Yeah.
They set up these huge scale manufacturing things, which is where the price thing comes from.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Because if you don't want to participate with a craft brew because of price, you're just not appreciating like the manufacturing scale. That, like,
And the quality of the beer isn't even that good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny. Coors does this thing. They have this bottle. I mean, a can rather, and it's like basically don't drink it unless the can is blue, which means that it's cold.
Oh, right.
Basically, it has it's cold enough that it's gonna mask the flavor. So just make sure that the
shout out
cans
to
are
Coors.
blue. Shout out to Coors.
So I guess what we kind of opened with is we're trying to hone in on this idea of like phenomenon. I think it's something that isn't really something it's amorphous. It's really hard to like pin to like one specific thing, and it changes a lot. But one thing that's really, really cool about something like the microbrewery phenomenon is that it's adaptable to each environment that it's in. And
if you listen, you can probably hear the forklift sound from
and that's the people moving the kegs and stuff up and down. Yeah. So it's like it's a really super cool environment that like I think changes from wherever you are, because I can like from like places like Sierra Nevada that are now that's massive. Like there's some places that started out as microbreweries that blew up like crazy. And like for a little like anecdote, like when I was in Dublin a couple months ago for about a week and a half, I was there on a trip and I was like, oh yeah, like I'll go there and like I'll go to a pub and I'll get a Guinness, because that's where you go. You're in Dublin, you get a Guinness. But like I was looking at like on the wall they had a chalkboard and it was like our beer of the week is Victory Hop Devil, and I was like my head like cocked and I was like, wait a second, and I was like, oh my god, like Victory is literally like in in what was it, Downingtown and outside of Philadelphia, and like it's not that big of a brewing company, but like I was like really surprised.
Yeah,
like,
and you're in Dublin.
I'm in Dublin, and in like some like
beer of the week.
and I went up to the bartender. I was like, I literally like I can drive to that brewery. Like that's where like I'm from the U.S. and I know that beer. Like it's crazy how there's like it's becoming not just like it's these communities, but also to kind of like branch out into something bigger. And that's kind of the cool factor of the phenomenon, is that it spreads, and it's like and it's something that everybody can kind of get behind, because someone's like, oh yeah, like that's a really cool thing, like I can definitely get behind that, I can definitely support that.
Yeah, if you're a microbrewery and your beer's okay and you have a sweet story, you're most likely going to be
you're going to be doing okay.
That's true. This is like it's kind of a very nerdy thing to talk about, but it's like I would refer to it as like a creative platform.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Right. So platforms are things that you can build your own unique thing on top of, but are very accessible. Right. So Facebook is a platform, Instagram is a platform, YouTube's a platform. Beer is kind of a platform.
Yeah.
For you to be a creator.
Yeah.
And there's varying levels of success. There's beers that probably put out that nobody drank, and then there's like massive like Victory and
exactly
that are sort of like the victors go to spoils. But by having that platform, you unlock the ability for relatively local things, where local means like not connected to like big city resources or whatever, and independent, because it's going to be independent. Like there's not going to be, if you're in a small community, like even though like where we're at, the Lehigh Valley, there's it's about 1 million people if you include all the suburbs. so it's a sizable place, but there's not going to be a bunch of people to talk about brewing with.
No, exactly.
Particularly not at manufacturing.
Yeah, exactly.
Home brew or whatever, but like, shipping, I don't know what the number is, 100,000 bottles a year or something like that. Very few people are going to relate to that right here.
Yeah, and even understand like the concept of like the scaling behind that, and like understanding the ins and outs of how that manufacturing would happen. You'd have to go to places like St. Louis to talk to the guys that are like from
Denver's also big for
they got Coors, so it's like the guys that are, if you're either
Tire, they have a bunch of
Flat Tire is awesome.
Yeah, so that kind of like is I feel like is an adaptation, like I said, of like a very cool community that's kind of expanded a lot recently. But then another thing that we kind of want to hone in on too with this phenomenon is like the idea of like really popular trends that blow up pretty quickly. And I think one of the things to talk about is something like Airbnb. And Airbnb is like one of those companies that, when you think about how it started, it was just literally a couple of dudes that were like, I'm going to rent out my place so that I can get a couple extra bucks so I can go out and enjoy myself on a vacation or something, and people can live in my apartment if I clean it up. And next thing you know, Airbnb is a global multi-billion dollar business with headquarters all over the world, and like houses and apartments wherever you can imagine, whatever trip.
It's like
you can probably get an Airbnb literally in probably like Wyoming, like that kind of stuff. Like Definitely. So it's that kind of stuff. Like it's a very accessible platform in the same way that we were talking about platforms for beer.
So they're just because I had to like do a technical thing off to the side here. I just Googled it quick. Airbnb is scheduled to do $3 billion in profit. So
this year?
It's by 2020. By 2020. So they're probably doing $1 billion or something in profit. Yeah. So like they're a marketplace. So they have to pay out the.
Are they public?
No, not yet.
They haven't an IPO.
They're probably scheduled to do it, but basically they have to pay out their homeowners, right? People listing it. I don't know what their listing fee is. It's probably about 25-30%.
Yeah.
So they take 25-30%. Then they got to pay out like all the people.
Mm-hmm. And services behind all that stuff, like the cleaning and all that, and the inspectors and all that.
Yeah. So after that would be the profit. So overall revenue was several times that. It's probably 20 million or 25 million or something.
So what's like the application process? Do you just like take pictures of your house and be like?
It was really interesting. There's this guy, one of the founders, Brian Chesky, does a lot of interviews, and he talks about in the beginning they were getting terrible growth because very, very beginning, because people were taking photos on their camera phone. And this was like 2008, 2009.
So like super pixely, like you can't see anything. Like
if you had a nice phone, it was a first gen iPhone.
Yeah.
Right. So okay photos, but like not amazing. So they actually they contracted. I don't know exactly what the arrangement was. They contracted with photographers locally to come in. They fixed the deal for like $100.
That's cool.
Get the room done, and they were beautiful. And now it's like a standard thing, which I think is really, really important, because when you look at Airbnb inventory, there's a consistent like brightness and like color palette that gives you a better ability to make a quick decision by comparing things.
Yeah.
And also it's just a much better photo.
Yeah. One funny thing is I was back in, I think maybe early high school, middle school.
Yeah.
I was chatting with my friend on my side. It was a Razor or something, I think.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Yo, can I get the homework?" So I sent him a picture, and he's like, "I can't read it, man." And I was like trying to focus the camera, and you literally could not read like the homework assignment.
You can't read
because the
text.
camera was so bad.
Can't focus.
So I could imagine. I mean, I didn't know Airbnb back then, but I could only imagine what like the houses look like. They're like, I'm not going here. Like,
I can't see
stay
it.
there. I can't even see what the color of the wall is.
Sometimes you see like a Craigslist ad, and it's like the room is for like an apartment or like a sublet, and like the room just looks absolutely decrepit. It's like it's just like a
bag of Doritos on the ground.
It's like it looks like in a basement. And it's dark. It's a camera phone. It's like somebody. It's like a murder. So
we live upstairs.
Yeah. So that's huge. It's also really interesting because there's like an enabling part of their business is the availability of like great photography, right?
Yeah.
Which is something like if you had asked me, I'm older than these guys. So like if you had asked me like 10 years ago, like, does everybody need a camera? I'd be like, no, like, some people are going to buy really nice cameras, and then everybody's going to use their camera phone. But there's, like, this, like, it's just big. It's huge, right? It's like, everybody has access to a great camera, and there's a wide variety of them. Like, the one we're doing this vlog with it's a $450 camera, but it does a lot of things well for $450. It's very useful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's cool. So I think that's, again, about platforms, right? So like Brewing is an accessible platform for like local manufacturing. Airbnb is an accessible platform for listing your, doing a side hustle, like listing your extra guest bedroom, whatever. And they are enabled by platforms, right?
Exactly.
Like the availability of great photography.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
yeah, there's something to build off. And then I think that the nature of so many of these phenomenons comes from like people that are really good at spotting these trends, and they are the people who like the idea of like the early adopters and people who are riding these trends and kind of bolster them with their own reputation, their own following. So you have these people that on the beginning that start something, that understand exactly what the prospects of it could be if it runs well and it actually follows through with what it's promised. And those are the people that are taking the most risk, but also the people that come on afterwards that are like the promoters, like the ambassadors of the product, are the guys that are like, oh wow, like I heard about this from someone, but it's like really, really cool. I'm gonna tell everybody I know about this.
Mm-hmm.
And then next thing you know, it just, the exponential growth of it is not only completely visible, but like you can look at a website and you can probably look at its analytics and be like, this, like a small amount of traffic came in this one day and the next day it just blew up. And that could be from someone who's a really important influencer that sees it and kind of blows it up in their own way.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
So
shout out to influencers, share this.
yeah, if you hey,
Shout out.
that's the kind of stuff we like to see. But like I think like we were debating what we should talk about when it came up beforehand, and I was like, man, we should really talk about something like Pokemon, because it's one of those things where I remember like when I was a kid, it's one of those things everyone was super passionate about, like all the cards and the video games and your Game Boy, and then it had this huge spike in the late 90s, and like every kid.
What year did you graduate high school?
Graduated 2014. We were 2014.
Represent.
Yeah, and like the first game came out in '98. My brother's gonna get mad at me if I don't get this right. But but so like 98, 99 was the first generation of games, and it was really, really popular. It blew up. Like Japan came in there with a really super good idea, and everyone just kind of followed.
How many Pokemon were there? How many types?
Don't start testing me. It's the original 151. But so there's like this huge following of it that really blew up, and for like maybe about half a decade, about 5 years, it became a central platform for kids to not only kind of socialize, but enjoy a free-form platform. They're able to kind of express themselves. They can name their Pokemon, they can trade them, they can do their own thing. It was super cool. But then it died.
Pokemon,
so it died out really quickly though, because it kind of got solid. It kind of like transformed into something that everyone did to something that like became kind of nerdy, and that was it.
Go ahead.
And like because of that, the trend died. It didn't really die, but it became much more of a niche group of people.
Yeah, it became like, oh, you collect Pokemon cards? Like what?
Yeah, like it's like oh, you still do that? Like you're still playing with Pokemon?
Someone's like, hell yeah, I collect Pokemon cards.
Yeah, so like it's one of those things. Like and then lo and behold, like a couple years down the line, what was it? July of 2016, June of 2016, you had Pokemon Go, and
Yeah.
and
The long tail.
Yeah, and it's just like the resurgence of the rebirth, the resurgence of it is that whole model of like everyone's like, oh, you got that bubble, it's going, it crashes, and then you have these people that come back on, and the guys who developed it were like, there's still more to be done with it.
It's sweet.
And it's a really,
I'm
really
level
cool
25.
Yeah.
One of the best trainer in
so like
Let everybody at home. Nick's got a hot tip for you about Pokemon.
2700 Dragonite, hit me up.
Pretty sure everybody got.
But yeah, so like and then we were like one of the things I was thinking about, I was like, oh man, like I can't even imagine what San Francisco must have been like during that time, like when it blew up, when it just launched, like pre-launch even, people were like, oh my god, like
I think maybe what's like, not only was the scale of the phenomenon in San Francisco crazy, but the age shift.
Oh yeah,
right. Because like San Francisco is definitely like where it's what's the Peter Pan? What's the thing where the land where they go? Is it Neverland?
Neverland, yeah.
So Neverland.
Bunch of kids that don't ever grow up.
Yeah, you don't have to grow up there. So I mean,
you should, but like
you might be roundly criticized by, by a lot of people, but you don't actually have to grow up if you don't want to. So it was like literally hordes of people. Like it was definitely like I was hanging out with people in parks and stuff, and like we roaming hordes, And
Yes.
even, I was telling these guys earlier, went on a date, and the woman and her...
It was a Tinder date, by the way.
Yeah, a classy Tinder date.
Shout out Tinder.
It was Tinder black tie. It was like very...
Oh, very, very formal.
Very high. and it was age appropriate swiping too, just to be clear. And but because it would be confusing, right? Because it put like, okay, basically the profile said, I'm not here to date. I just want somebody to go catch Pokemon with.
And you were like,
Which I thought was really cute. Which was then. And she was my age. That's the other important part of the story. And then she was serious. She was like slightly disappointed when I didn't want to go catch Pokemon the first time we hung out. So yeah, that was all over the place. That was insane.
Yeah, I feel like that's definitely, I think, one of the coolest like recent phenomenons, because it allowed a lot of people to kind of get like a reconnection to something from their childhood, and like and nostalgia is so powerful, man. It's crazy how much it just makes people latch on to like good memories of when they were a kid, and like there's a lot of fondness when you talk about something like Pokemon. There's a really strong community around it, and like because of that resurgence, it was really successful. I mean, it powered Nintendo stocks for months.
Yeah.
I mean, it made Nintendo relevant again, because it was just getting beaten by Sony and Microsoft in the video game stuff.
Yeah.
So like, it's one of those things that there's a lot of power behind phenomenon that isn't just like social, that isn't just cultural. There's money behind it, man, and it's
yeah,
huge.
dude. I mean, it was so big. Like, you'd be walking somewhere like to go hit a Pokestop, and you would like see other people around you, and you would be like, they're definitely playing Pokemon. Like, these people are playing Pokemon. And I've like seen moms, like 40-year-old moms, like catching Pokemon.
Yeah, so like there's a power behind it all, and that's why phenomenon in and of itself is something that is really cool to like talk about, because there's a lot of people that are on the outset of it that are like gonna be the ones who bet on it the best way, that follow those trends.
Yeah, to bring it back, right?
Yeah, to bring it all back.
The reason bring this up is because it's how do you make it, right?
Yeah.
How do you make it? How do you make it in America?
Yeah.
Because it's never been. I mean, I think I'm optimistic. Like I think, but I just think that the hustle is different.
It is.
You know what I mean? The hustle is different, and you got to be smart about it. You got to be assessing the situation clearly from first principles or whatever you call it, and you can test yourself by betting on these things. Like one of the things I always thought it was super irritating when people placed bets in casual situations.
Yeah.
Like there's the worst case, which is they're a degenerate gambler. Like I know one guy who was a degenerate gambler and had like a bunch of money in poker, and then like lost. They went like hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah,
in
that kind of
stuff. That's not a good situation.
That kind of stuff is
Hundreds
scary,
of
man.
thousands. I talked about that on there.
Yeah.
And then basically
Call your gambling hotlines if you have a gambling addiction. Seriously though.
it's PSA. But then there's like other people who are just like really hyper competitive.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm never doing that. Those people are all douchebags,
Yeah.
But now
Sorry,
I
iTunes.
yeah, sorry. I think we'll put the content flag on this one. And but basically, I've started doing it. I started doing it a lot, and basically what it is it's like a skin in the game thing. Sean and I were talking about this Monday. Nassim Taleb is this guy. You can go read about him. He published a couple very good books. They have controversial aspects to them, but one of the cool things about them is like skin in the game.
Yeah.
Right? And skin in the game comes from when you have something to lose. You're viscerally connected to the outcome of something. Mm-hmm. And I realized placing small bets helps me, because everybody talks about technology all the time, right?
Yeah.
And like, oh, that's going to happen. Everybody thinks they're like a futurist or whatever. And I was like, there's no such thing as a futurist. There's two types of people. There's entrepreneurs who have it all on the line to prove something is going to work, or investors who are investing their own money.
Yeah.
Everybody else is just
riding the waves.
Yeah, just talking.
Yeah.
So I was like, so now I bet a lot, but it's basically a training mechanism, And I think
What do you bet on?
Like Uber is a big one. So I placed the public bet in this alumni forum I'm in that like thousands of people probably saw, and basically it's all like it's all unfolding now for Uber with this trucking company they bought, Auto. I don't want to get too deep into this, but basically it's unraveling. It's probably not working out. And the lead engineer, this guy Anthony, who they basically were trying to get by buying this company, he just got fired. So
really?
Yeah, he got fired.
Jeez.
So it's getting really nerdy. But basically, everybody, like when they bought the company, everybody was like, oh my God, Uber is going to automate the million small businesses that are trucking companies in the United States. It's going to be 1 million truckers out of business by 2020.
Yeah.
And I put the time frame out by like 10 years because I was like, you guys are totally misunderestimating like regulatory hurdles, like all this other stuff. So I've placed it publicly, and there's actually a site for doing this. I think it's called like long bets or something like that.
There's a lot of them. So and that's that. I forget. There's like bet anything, a bunch of different stuff where you can literally just post for any kind of bet for anything. And then that kind of another thing I wanted to talk about too, especially if we're going off of this thing, is like daily fantasy for sports.
Oh yeah.
Daily fantasy has become this kind of thing where it's the whole idea of like skinning the game, because people start watching not important baseball games where you can look in the where you can be watching some of these games on TV and there's like 15 people on screen that are actually at the game because
I got $50 on it.
Yeah, but like,
I'm watching.
Yeah, but it's not even like $50. These dudes that literally are like, they have like the daily fantasy lineups where they're like watching like one specific player and like that's their skin in the game. So they're watching this one dude who is up to bat once every like 45 minutes. And like, and they're like watching these baseball games. So it's like that. The idea is that people have kind of taken a hold of this idea of promoting whatever they're on, or not even promoting whatever they're on, but like they're paying attention to stuff that they probably wouldn't have normally paid attention to had they not actually been aware of some kind of daily fantasy or some kind of connection to it.
Yeah.
And betting is one of those things. So
I think that's slightly different though, because
you think it is? Okay.
Well,
yeah.
If you call, not to call you out.
Yeah.
But basically, like if you call the right bet on a given player, you're not really training a skill that can help you as an entrepreneur and investor.
Okay.
I believe.
Okay.
I'm open to being convinced.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a way to kind of address that too. It's like because the way the systems work with the points and everything, essentially you create a team based on a group of players, and that requires knowledge of what's going on in the league, who's hot, who's playing well, who's not playing well, what team they're playing against, all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's dudes that do fantasy sports that are like retired statisticians that make millions of dollars on fantasy because they
have like insider trading.
Well, no, it's not even insider trading. It's these dudes that have these algorithms that account for everything, like from like wind speed to air humidity to how efficient a pitcher's going to be on a Wednesday. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, like
so. Like, there's dudes that literally have gamed it to such a point that
now I'm not doing fantasy leagues.
Well, yeah, but those are the guys that are like the guys that like win it. That are like math geniuses that algorithm all that stuff out to extents that no one would even think is like somewhat reasonable.
I'd be mad if someone like came up to me and they're like, "I know how you're going to perform today because it's this temperature out." Like,
well,
I've been studying you.
Yeah, but there's like an accuracy to it. So that's those are the guys that, of course, like they're making these bets based on stats, on what they know, on what their actual certainty is towards all of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so betting on phenomenons is something that I think is something that everyone should kind of try to like look into and try and observe in their own way. Legally. Well, even the idea of betting on phenomenons, I don't even necessarily mean monetary wise.
If you need a bookie, hit me. No,
so like the idea, like
you get in a jam financially, I know a guy.
So yeah, like follow trends that you think are cool, and a lot of times you'll find
that's the lesson. That's what we're trying to get.
That's what we're trying to get.
Follow trends that you think are cool.
But like but at the same time, don't allow yourself to fall into every trend, because then you're just kind of becoming like a follower. Like
right, and that's the important part of like the bet too, I think, because you can't bet
on everything
infinitely. Right? And it doesn't make sense to like bet against yourself. Right?
Exactly.
You're like, if you're gonna bet on the outcome of a game, if you bet $10 the Yankees are going to win and $10 the Yankees are going to lose, it's a symmetrical bet. You're not going to win anything.
Exactly.
You have to choose one or the other.
Yeah.
Yep.
And training yourself on that is good, and doing it at very low stakes.
Yeah.
Which is what's cool about the brewery thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because beer's a platform. The manufacturing space is like readily available.
Mm-hmm.
Municipalities want to give it away, basically, and if you have a good story, good brand, and a decent recipe and like you hustle and put it out there, you can place a moderate risk bet that has potential to grow into a real business.
Yeah,
exactly. And that's the
Have you guys ever heard of paper trading?
No, is that?
It's basically